Persons may speak on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a speaker card and to state their name and address before addressing the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments for any item to no more than 3 minutes in order to allow everyone who wishes to speak the opportunity to do so. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 10 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comment to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If additional time is needed, public comment will continue after the discussion items. And I have one speaker card from Charles Shannon.
Charles Shannon, OEA President. It's that time of year again, board, where we have the school board breakfast. It's an opportunity for us to join us. It's an event designed to honor our elected board members, new and current, as well as provide an opportunity to learn more about CTA, how it functions, and what we can do together to provide a strong education for the children of our community. We look forward to seeing one of you, or more, if you so choose. The event happens January 23rd, beginning at 8:30 a.m. at the Doubletree Hilton. Colleen Sullivan will be joining you, and I will be sending you an invitation online. I'll try to do that tonight if I get home at a reasonable time, if not then in the morning. But we definitely welcome you. It's a really nice occasion. I know that Sarah, you've gone before. I don't know, has any other than you've gone to, Julie? Yeah. So, Carol, maybe this is your year? Or Matt, if you haven't been? It's a really nice breakfast. They had Mark Sallier last year speak. That was a real honor to have him there. And so, please join us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to recognitions. Our Employees of the Month and Partner in Education for December 2015. The board will recognize Ashley Ho of the certificated staff, Kathy Schwartz of the classified staff, and Sonia Grover, Wagner Ranch PC co-president, for their outstanding efforts on behalf of the school district. I will start with Ashley Ho. So maybe right there. Right there. See it? Yes, I do. This month, we honor Gloria, the 4th grade teacher, Ashley Ho, as the district's certificated employee of the month. Ashley is being recognized for her many contributions, commitment, and passion for those she serves. In the classroom, her demonstrable aptitude for engaging students, coupled with her enthusiastic approach, effervescent presence, and positive energy, makes for a model learning environment. Beyond the classroom, Ashley continues to be instrumental in guiding and mentoring her fellow 4th grade colleagues who are new to the team, and is also a dedicated contributor to the teacher induction program. Ashley serves on a variety of committees, is student council co-advisor, and willingly takes charge, even when it involves leading a whole school activity with no rehearsal time. I'm sure there's a story there. We salute Ashley Ho for her all-star performance and thank her for her dedicated service and spirited demeanor. Now we have Kathy Schwartz. Where'd she go? Employee for the month. Kathy Schwartz is a positive, hardworking, and conscientious member of the district office staff. She supports the directors of facilities and technology. She coordinates maintenance work orders essential to keeping our schools in good shape and processes requests for technology support. She starts her mornings arranging substitutes to ensure teacher and custodial absences are covered. Kathy has a very cheerful and upbeat disposition. Yes, that is true. She is known for inserting colorful emojis or humorous caricatures in her emails to bring smiles and brighten the day of recipients. Kathy's exemplary work ethic and positive attitude remind us of the words of that great bluegrass song. Keep on the sunny side. It will help us every day. It will brighten all our way if we keep on the sunny side of life. And it is also her birthday. It was very nice of you to spend a little time here with us today. So thank you, Kathy. And our last recognition is Sonia Grover, Wagner Ranch Parent Club co-president. Sonia's deep understanding of all things Wagner Ranch, her tireless devotion to the school, and her ability to create enthusiasm and galvanize parents make a huge difference for students, staff, and parents. Her calm, far-sighted approach to school improvement have enabled two new principals, Adam Seville and Jim Mannheimer, to find their way and make progress in a supportive, team-oriented environment. Her thoughtful, engaging manner instills confidence and helps parents maintain a positive attitude toward their work and the challenges that arise. Sonia is a courageous leader and will address and make progress on the most difficult issues, both at the school and district level. Her sense of humor and ready laugh make meetings and interactions more enjoyable and are great for stress reduction. We thank Sonia for her outstanding commitment to Wagner Ranch and her stellar leadership. Thank you. And everyone knows, if you need to leave, you understand, you have to stay, but you're welcome to. So we're going to move on to our consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are acted on by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There is no discussion of these items before the board vote unless a member of the board, staff, or public requests specific items be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. It is understood that the administration recommends approval on all consent items. Each item on the consent calendar approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. I'm going to pull item A. And we'll move that to the end of action items. Is there any other items?
I move that we adopt the consent calendar, pulling item A and putting it at the end of action items.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, so that is unanimous. We'll now move on to action item A, 2014-15 Annual Developer Fee Report.
Good evening. Item A on the action items agenda is an annual developer fee report for the 14-15 fiscal year. And what it is to let you know how much money we took in and where the money is spent and what was left over at the end of the year. We did receive less developer fee revenue in the 14-15 year compared to prior year. We received $169,914, which was a decrease of $297,000 from prior year, or $467,000. But considering we did have a beginning fund balance of $3.3 million, we did have some interest earned of $9,800. We had a total revenue of $3.5 million. And we have spent $164,000 in the 14-15 year, mostly on portable leases. And the direction that was taken in the current year was to eliminate the portable leases and purchase them. So what you'll see in 15-16 will be different. You'll see the actual purchases and less on lease and rentals. We do wind up with an ending balance of $3.3 million. These funds could only be spent on growth-related expenditures that impact the schools, like purchasing portables, leasing portables, furniture related to the classrooms, or the impact of additional growth-related impact that happens within the district. And this item is for action to accept the 14-15 annual developer fee report.
So Teresa, what's the main contributor to the decrease?
The fees that we received in the areas, the new areas that came about in, I can't remember that development. What was that name of that development out there?
Says Pine Grove, the reason that was it
Wilder?
inflated?
Wilder.
Both?
Yes,
Wilder
Wilder.
Oh, wow.
Wilder and the Pulte,
Okay.
between the two. There isn't much activity going on in Wilder. There's, and we have it, the developer fee is based on a square footage amount, and that fee does increase as of January, and I will be presenting a new report to increase our fees.
So is this amount more in line with prior years, and last year was a little bit of a bump? Have you looked back like that?
I did
Yeah.
not to compare, going back more than just the 1 year. But there,
Do you remember?
I don't know, I do know there were some fluctuations in exemptions. for
And then we
seniors.
changed the amounts of the developer
Yeah.
fees too, so. Okay.
So I have a question. I don't know if this is a dumb question, but is it related to the property sold? Like you mentioned in Wilder, there's not a lot of activity right now. So once more properties are sold, our fees would go up.
there are two ways. One is brand new development, adding square footage to existing brand new homes, but then there's also, we can collect if an existing Orinda home is adding square footage to their property. And we will get that increase also, or the additional living space.
Mhm. Okay.
So it's building related, not sale. Okay.
It's collected when they pull permits,
Okay.
based on the square footage of construction, or remodel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I move that,
Oh, I mean.
oh, sorry.
Okay. I'm now going to open this up to public comment. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Back to the board. Any other follow-up from the board?
Now, I get to move that we accept action item A, the 2014-2015 annual developer fee report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, that's unanimous. We will now move on to action item B, 2014-15 annual financial audit report.
Tonight we have Pauline Tokunaga from Chinchilla Tokunaga Public Accountants to speak on behalf of our 14-15 annual financial audit report.
Good evening, board. Good evening, superintendent and the business department. Again, my name is Pauline Tokunaga, and I am one of the partners at Chiquella & Tokunaga LLP. And I'm going to briefly go through our annual audit report. So this is the third year that we are presenting this report, and every year we get to know the district a little bit more, understand internal controls a little bit better, the reports that we need. So I'd like to thank the business department for accommodating us. We're here twice a year, interim and final phase. During the interim visit, which is done in the springtime, we do a walkthrough of internal controls. So we look at cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, some budget monitoring, and walk them through the procedures that are in place at the business office to see if those internal controls are functioning the way that they are intended to function. And also during interim, we go through the state compliance requirements, such as attendance reporting, instructional minutes, instructional materials, and so forth. So there's a bunch of state compliance requirements that's listed in a state compliance guide that's issued every year by the state controller's office. So those are the two main areas that we look at interim, and then we come back at final. And at final, that's when we look at the unaudited actuals and do a lot of testing of the balance sheet accounts, revenue and expenditures, and also we get the information we need to write this lovely report, 100-page report this year, and I'll explain why it's so much longer this year than it normally is. Well, not so much longer, but a bit longer. So the report is basically broken down in about 5 main sections here. There's a financial section, required supplementary information, and then our audit reports, and then a summary of all our auditors' results. So the entire purpose, or the primary purpose of the audit, is for us to issue an opinion on the financials of the district. And historically, the district has received a qualified opinion, which basically means that, and that is on page 2, which basically means that, in our opinion, the financials are free of material misstatement, except for the area that we explain in the following paragraph. And historically, it's been qualified because there are component units of the district that we categorize as component units, which are the community organizations that provide a lot of the financial support for the district because of the amount, the materiality threshold that we have. They are considered component units, but they're not. Their financials are not part of the district's financials. And their financials are actually not audited. We don't audit it, and I don't think they're actually audited as we review with Teresa every year. So, but aside from that, the financials of the district for 14-15, in our opinion, are free of material misstatement. In page 16 is our first financial statement, statement of net position, and this is the government-wide sort of balance sheet, if you will. This is a combination of all the assets, liabilities of the district. And one of the reasons why the report is a little longer this year is because GASB 68, which is a new pronouncement implemented in 14-15, expands the reporting requirement for net pension liability. So that's STRS and PERS. So you'll see a couple new descriptions here on this statement of net position: deferred outflows of resources, deferred inflows of resources related to pensions. So those are there because the deferred outflows is essentially the current year contribution of the district to STRS and PERS. But because the actuarial reports of these plans are always a year behind, that's why it's a deferred outflow. And the deferred inflow is the difference between the actual and estimated investment on the actuarial report. So these are prepared by the auditors of that plan. So it's actually very complicated. There's a lot of footnotes in this section. So and that's why the additional pages. Statement of activities on page 17 is essentially like the government-wide income statement, again, if you will, for the district. basically telling you where government program revenues are coming from and the different functions that the categories that they fall under. And then we have comes down to the ending net position of the district, 6/30/15. So those are the government-wide financials, and then the funds of the district, the different governmental funds, such as the general fund, capital facilities fund, et cetera, are broken down by fund. So on page 18, you'll see that these are the major funds: general fund, capital facilities, capital projects. So based again on thresholds that we use, these qualify as as major funds. And then the notes, which start on page, 30, on page 30. So that goes into a little bit more detail as far as the accounting policies of the district, a little bit more description as far as the amounts that are reported on the financial statements. You'll see a breakdown of long-term debt, capital assets, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and the fund balance designation. So those are all in the notes to the financial statements. And also there's information on GASB 68. It's one of the last notes in the notes section. Let's see here. As far as the required supplementary information, you'll see more information on the schedule of the district's proportionate share of net pension liability. That's on page 64, and the schedule of the district's contribution for pension. So a little bit more information on that new GASB that was implemented in 14-15. In the supplementary section, starting page 68, there is a schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So that lists the federal awards that were expended during the year. And going through those pages, you'll also see the schedule of ADA for the P2 reporting period, the annual period. And one of the useful schedules, or one of the more useful schedules, is on page 73, which is the schedule of financial trends and analysis. So that gives you a little bit more perspective as far as what the results were in the last 2 years in comparison to 2014-15, and then what's budgeted for 2016. And here, we also calculate whether or not the district is meeting their minimum reserve requirements of 3%. So historically, the district has been exceeding that. You will see that as available reserves as a percentage of total outgo on page 73. And lastly, let's see, do I want to say lastly? Okay. So on page, there's a couple more auditors' reports that I wanted to touch upon. On page 81 and 83, there is an independent auditor's report on internal control. We're not actually rendering an opinion, but basically just stating that we looked at it and did some testing on that. And then also the auditor's report on state compliance. So as I mentioned earlier, during interim, we look at all the state compliance requirements that are applicable to the district. So on page 83, you'll see that report and whether or not the district has or is compliant with each of those requirements. And in this case, the district is, there are no non-compliant items. And there were no findings for 14-15, and the summary of all our auditors' results are on page 87. It just summarizes what I mentioned as far as our report opinion and if we've identified any material weaknesses and so forth. So I think that will conclude my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions from the board?
I'll just make a comment. Pauline, thank you very much, and Teresa, thank you very much. It's always great to be on this side of the table and have what I'm going to call a clean audit report. And I want to thank the superintendent for leading us, retiring off into the sunset, leaving us with a clean audit. And we take that for granted in this district, but that's not something we should take for granted because that's certainly not always the case. So it's really nice to have an audit report with no findings. I appreciate the thorough job you and your firm have done, and Teresa, this really speaks really well to our district, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Well, I kind of have a question.
Sure.
And I first want to say, I forget what page it is. But I
Sure.
know last year there was an indication of the large percentage of local funding that we have. Related to your comments about, was, I think, page 3, the qualified and the fact that we have funding from our parents clubs and EFO, our foundations.
Yes.
I wasn't clear. I think you were saying you aren't auditing those organizations, so you're not commenting on it, which is different than saying they're not being audited. Is that correct? Because I kind of think
Correct.
some of them
So,
are.
so as far as the last time that we were here, our understanding is, based on our discussions too with Teresa, is that those organizations are not yet subject to audit. Because if they were, we would probably, we would request copies of those reports just so that we can have an idea of how their operations are also going. But you are correct. They are separate entities. But as far as our guidelines, because of the amount of support that they provide, they qualify as component units of the district, even though their financials are completely separate.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I previously been on the parent club board and
Yeah.
EFO board, and I think they do a great job, and I just want
Yes.
to acknowledge, we really
Oh,
appreciate the fundraising. And I think that I'm not sure if it's EFO or parent club, but I think they have pretty good controls on, and I think one of them does audit. I'm not sure if it's parents club or EFO or both, but I just
Okay.
wanted to address that. So thank you, and thank you for all your work, and I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
this.
Is there any downside to having a qualified audit when it's just based on the fact of, our component units?
No, there isn't a downside. Really, it's just a formality for us to issue this opinion. It really depends on the qualification, because it is due to outside organizations with separate financials that can't be included with the district. There really isn't a downside. Now, if it were a qualification, say for instance, we were not comfortable with the cash balances, then there would be a little more scrutiny as far as that area.
Okay. So just because it's based on this particular
Yes, exactly.
reason.
Yes, and that's what we definitely, in our opinion, we mention what that is.
Right.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
your work. If there are no other questions from the board, I'll take it to public comment. Is there any comments from the public? We might zip through. Who knows what we might do tonight? At 10 o'clock, I'll be like, nope.
Well, maybe I have something to say.
No, just kidding.
Okay, this item is on for action.
I move we approve the 2014-2015 annual financial audit report.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we now move on to action item C, 2014-15 to 2016-17, compensation for OUSD unrepresented employees management.
Action item C.
Oh, yeah, C, I read C.
Action item C is an agenda bill summarizing the financial impact of the unrepresented management, the compensation for a 3-year agreement, which is in alignment with the same agreement provided to the OEA, Orinda Education Association members. This is a 3-year. The difference, there's one difference in compensation, and that is in the 16-17 year, management will not increase 3 days and receive professional development from the 3 days, because that was equivalent to 1.5% in addition to the 1%. So in 16-17, it is 1%. So for 14-15, it's 1.5. For 15-16, it's 1.5. And for 16-17, it's 1%. There is also a one-time off the salary schedule compensation, which is equivalent to what the OEA group also received, and that is $2,667 each of the 3 years. And the total compensation, the total general fund impact for this compensation for the 3 years is $201,574, which would be funded by one-time reserves and also the LCFF increases that have been already reflected in our financials. It is recommended that the board approve the compensation agreement with the Orinda School District unrepresented management employees.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Let me take this. Are there any comments from the public?
Charles Shannon, OEA President. I just want to put a shout out to the bargaining teams. OEA's bargaining team worked really hard with the district, and this represents a real concerted effort to find a way to more adequately compensate all of our employees, but in particular for OEA, it was for our teachers. And the unrepresented management folks also benefit from that. So we want to say, thank you to the district's team in working with us to make sure that this didn't only happen for teachers, but also happen for our hardworking directors, principals, and superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Any comments from the board? I just want to again reiterate how glad we are that you were able to put together the 3-year deal. I just think that's a real gift for our district and for the next superintendent. So thank you. This is up for action.
So I appreciate all of the bargaining team's work as well, and I'm in favor of this, so I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the agenda item C, 14-15 to 16-17 compensation for OUSD unrepresented employees management.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. That was unanimous. On to action item D. 2014-15 to 2016-17 compensation for OUSD unrepresented employees, school psychologist / behavior specialist.
The unrepresented employees, as you've mentioned, psychologists and behavior specialists, will also receive the same compensation agreement in line with the Orinda Education Association members. The only difference is that 3rd year where the 1.5% is not included because this group would not increase their work days by 3 days. So 14-15 is 1.5%, 15-16 is 1.5%, and 16-17 is 1%. The ongoing off the salary schedule one-time compensation is also equivalent at $2,667 per year. Total compensation package, fiscal impact to the general fund is $29,685, which will be funded by one-time reserves and the LCFF formula. It is recommended that the board approve the 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17 compensation agreement for the Orinda Union School District unrepresented employees.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any comments from the public?
Charles Shannon, OEA President. I want to say that certificated teachers work very closely with our psychologists and behavior specialists. We're really pleased to see that they also will benefit from this additional compensation. I've worked closely with them. I've had students that I've needed to provide additional services for, and I can say I absolutely rely on these folks, and I'm so glad that we have hired the best psychologists and behavior specialists. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, any other comments from the board? Okay, this item is up for action.
I move that we adopt action item D, 2014-15, 2016-17, compensation for OUSD unrepresented employees.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we now move on to action item E, Superintendent Employment Agreement 8th Addendum. Okay, so this is an addendum to Dr. Jaganet's employment agreement. In his employment agreement, it says that the base salary shall be increased by an equal percentage to that granted to management staff based on a satisfactory evaluation. So, it is required under Dr. Jaganet's employment agreement that we give him the same increase that we give to other management employees, which we just did this evening. Our most recent evaluation occurred last June for the 2014-2015 school year. Therefore, Dr. Jacanet is entitled to the salary increase that management received for that year. Since Dr. Jacanet is retiring at the end of this month, he will not be evaluated this year for the 2015-16 year. So he is not subject to the increases that we're giving to management beyond the 2014-15 school year. And that's what we have. Are there any questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Oh, do you have
I was just gonna say, I thought you might read the paragraph about the 14, 15, well, what's on number 2? Or the, according, or on the bill, agenda bill page, the 14-15 school year, because I did find that a little confusing, and I thought you should probably read it. Are you following me?
No.
Or I can just comment if you prefer.
Okay, I mean, I read the part about what the base salary, I read the quote, part of the quote.
Right, right. So I guess turning to the second page, page 184, I was just referring to number 2 where it says for the 14-15 school year, the superintendent's annual base salary as defined in the 7th addendum stated December 14th, 2015 shall be increased retroactively by 1.5% ongoing effective July 1st, 2014. I just found that sentence confusing because I was surprised that it had it referred to the 7th addendum that we approved last month rather than just the 14-15 school year. So I just wanted to say that.
Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Any comment from the public?
Charles Shannon, OEA President. OEA too is a little confused about the 14-15 retroactive, including the amount that we heard from the county was considered a cash in lieu. We're still not sure that it's appropriate to include the 1.5% for that amount. And we just wanted to make a public comment that we welcome more conversation about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Any comments from the board? This item's on for action.
I move we approve the superintendent employment agreement, 8th addendum.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I want to abstain just because of the confusion of that sentence that I mentioned.
So this is 3 in favor and 1 abstention. Okay, now we will, we still have F. Action item F, 2015-2016 district goals.
Thank you. So at our previous meeting, the board went through the draft district goals and went through the input of the various groups, and then made a number of suggestions about the content of the goals, some particularly related to facilities, and some reordering of the information. So we basically took all of those requests and did the revisions matching the meeting minutes from the last time. I reviewed them with our board president for consistency, and I think we captured everything there. So basically just bringing them back for approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, I appreciate the edits that were made, and I did check against what we had discussed last month, and it looks like you did include the changes, and I just want to comment, I'm especially glad to see added under facilities, item C, explore the feasibility of a 2016 facilities bond. And those, I just want to comment, are not necessarily in priority order, those items under facilities A, B, C, D. And I also want to comment under facilities A2, where it says complete the next phase of the facility task force priority projects authorized by the board pursuant to the 2013 master plan by resourcefully utilizing the remaining Pulte fund, the remaining Pulte/Fund 40 revenues, and then in parentheses September 15 through June 2016. I just wanted to say, since it says utilizing the remaining Pulte funds, I just wanted to say I'm anticipating we will continue using the Pulte funds for those things we've already authorized and that are bulleted below, but that we're not, I just wanted to say out loud, we're not trying to use all of the Pulte funds by June 2016, of course, and the remaining sort of implied that to me when I read it again. So, and with all that said, that's why I'm glad we will have a facilities bond discussion, because we can do the projects we've identified, and as we all know, we still have facility needs. So I just wanted to make those comments to everyone. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comment?
Oh, I had one other thing I wanted to say. Under technology, and I know we added from the last time, under item D, which is budget, we added the bullet point that says determine staffing. And I just wanted to comment that, of course, in the process of technology, we need to determine staffing for technology. But for ongoing staffing, we also need to take it into account of the entire budget process for staffing for all staff, as opposed to isolating it in our budget process. That's my opinion anyway of how to read that bullet. Thank you.
Public comment?
OEA president, OEA took the time, spent a lot of time actually providing input to the board. I sent that to you individually. I didn't really see any inclusion of input from OEA, and I'm disappointed about that. I did not even receive a call or email from anyone wanting to discuss further clarification on anything that we had provided. One thing that was really important to OEA members, our certificated staff, was that we rely on the expertise of our teachers in professional development rather than pay expensive consultants. And I did not see the inclusion of that, and I'm disappointed in that as well. Again, I think that OEA members need to be assured that our input is important to the district, acknowledged, and thoroughly discussed with us. No one ever came to us after we gave our input to say anything about it, like yay or nay. So for that, I feel like our members will continue to feel that no matter how much time we spend giving input as practitioners who have proven in this district that we provide amazing results for our children who go on to do amazing things, that our voice still not is heard through this particular process. Our voices may be heard differently through committee work or work directly with directors, but in this process, we feel quite shut out. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I think he makes a good point, and I realize now that that's true. We didn't edit that section under student achievement. I'm wondering if we could even just now add a phrase. I assume he's referring to topic B where it says provide training. That could be interpreted for B or possibly A or C, I'm not sure. But the most obvious is B where it says provide training, use of data management tools for assessment and analysis of student achievement, including the new state assessment resources. We could add some phrase of, including utilizing our staff or something to make our staff feel included so that they are not reading this as this would only be outside training. I wonder if Joe wants to comment if that's appropriate or not, or what.
I'm not sure what part, if I'm commenting on the process or the specific edit recommendation.
The edit recommendation, or if you feel that it's appropriate that we edit it, or whether that makes sense, or if there's something else we could do to, I mean, my point is that I don't want staff to feel like their experience, whether staff means teachers, principals, or any other staff, whether we want them to feel that their expertise is also important, and not only that this means that we're going to bring only outside consultants in for training. And so is there something we can do here that conveys that? That's
Are
my,
you talking about 1B or are you talking about 3C?
no, 1B under student achievement. What's 3C? 3C is technology. Is that what, I don't know if Charles was referring only to technology. I thought he was referring to all professional development.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, 1B only has to do with training and data management.
Okay, so,
So if you look at our schedule for providing professional development, both for this year and previous years, you'll see the enormous number of our dedicated teachers who have participated in providing those workshops, both with facilitation, working with Kathy Marshall to put those programs on. We don't use very many outside consultants in our work. We use them as necessary, but the bulk of the work is done by our own district teachers, and has been. So Kathy can comment on the details of that. Any input that was provided was sent directly to board members, so it's probably more important that any of you decide that, as opposed to us, but if you want information on the edits, Kathy can provide you with more details about the services that teachers provide in the workshops.
Great.
regard to the assessment and CASP training, just this last week, we participated in this room in a training of trainers workshop where we had up to 3 teachers per school site, training side by side with principals to learn new information that teachers would desire to have and will need to have as we move forward with assessment in the spring. And the plan for that training is to take that training as teachers are dialogue and working together to determine what is the most valuable and necessary information for their colleagues. They will be delivering that on January 25th at our full day staff development day in the afternoon. This is for grades 3 through 8. For grades TK through grade 2, we have a variety of other sessions that are taking place that are being developed by teachers and also facilitated by teachers with some additional information trainers coming in that were recommended by teachers because they wanted to learn more information about the particular programs that they're using in the classroom.
Well, it sounds like we're doing that. I guess I was just trying to make sure that we're making it clear that training could be both from outside trainers or trained in-house internal staff members. So I would sort of recommend provide, okay, I could propose we amend it to add, where it says provide training, we could add both in-house and outsider. What do you call it? Internal and external. What are the 2 phrases? Internal and external, in-house and outside, from outside training. Internal and external. How about that? Does anyone agree with my point? Should we wordsmith this, or do you prefer to leave it as is?
I prefer to leave it as is.
I don't see the harm in adding that, and I think that, you know, if this is gonna make the teachers feel more included, then I don't see any reason not to do this.
I don't see how it's saying internal and external, which covers everybody. Also, maybe if you wordsmith it a little more specifically to be, utilizing teacher mentors as much as possible, or some language, or better convey the desire to use people in-house rather than just saying internal and external.
Okay.
Which doesn't seem to.
I like that better, actually. Utilizing teacher mentors wherever possible.
Well, so provide training, comma, utilizing, is mentors the right word? Utilizing teacher.
I would put it at the beginning of the sentence, so utilizing wherever possible teacher mentors that provide training or use of data management tools.
So Joe's suggesting that teacher mentor is more of a term of art, and that we need to, that we
Don't use the word
officially
mentors.
use right now in the district, so.
Okay. What's another word?
Utilizing teachers as trainers, or? Is that better?
Facilitated.
You say something, teacher
Facilitators?
Yes,
As facilitators?
We have the language actually in our LCAP under our professional development goal.
Okay.
And so we talk about using teacher expertise to facilitate workshops or to facilitate trainings.
So utilizing teacher expertise wherever possible, provide training in the use of data management, etc.
So we'll add that to the beginning, clause in the beginning page, that where we're at.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So will you read it as amended?
Utilizing teacher expertise whenever possible, comma, provide training in the use of data management tools for assessment and analysis of
Does it say wherever possible in our LCAPs?
I don't recall that we have wherever possible.
How do we define possible?
When possible or appropriate.
It's another really vague word.
Yeah, well, these bullets are vague anyway, though. Utilizing teacher expertise. We
As
could say
appropriate.
when appropriate, or as appropriate. How about as appropriate?
Still vague.
It's still vague, but
I don't think you're gonna get around that.
I think that's one of the challenges of trying to wordsmith a goal here that we've been working on for a long time. We got a public comment from the president of the teachers union, who, he had his own opinions on it. But now we're talking about changing the words to make somebody feel better. I think we oftentimes express our appreciation for teachers and their work. I just don't want to get into a situation where we're using the word
On the other hand, it doesn't seem like,
appropriate.
we're changing what's actually being done, which sounds like we're already utilizing teacher facilitators quite a bit. So I
Right.
think that we're imposing something that's not already.
I'm just not comfortable with wherever possible or appropriate, because then I think we expose ourselves to the teachers union coming back and saying it was appropriate or possible, and you didn't.
Mhm.
well, how about when,
Do you
I
have a
think
suggestion?
when appropriate. I mean, obviously, even now, it's a judgment call on someone's part when we're providing training. Are we utilizing our teachers, or when do we need to get someone outside? It is a judgment call. So this is still a judgment call, but at least it spells it out that we want.
So why don't we say utilizing teacher expertise for the LCAP, or as provided in the LCAP, since we already have.
That's a good idea.
I like that.
That sounds good.
That was
Yeah.
Joseph. I'm
So
gonna
what's
take
the
that.
whole sentence say again? That's a good idea.
Utilizing teacher expertise.
Per the LCAP.
Or as stated in the LCAP. Consistent with the
Much more
LCAP,
professional, consistent with the LCAP.
comma,
Okay,
and then continue, provide training, et cetera.
that sounds good.
Okay, good.
There you go. Okay, any other comments? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the 15-16 district goals as amended.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, so that is unanimous. Moving to consent item A. So, I pulled it just because on page 2, under action 5116, election of board of trustees vice president, it says a motion was made and seconded nominating Ms. Rossiter. It should be Ms. Brown. So I'm just correcting that, and then that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, for catching that. I just want to say thank you for catching that. I actually had that crossed out and I forgot about it, so I'm glad you pulled that.
Okay, no questions from the board. Any public comment? Seeing none, this item is on for action.
I move that we approve item A off the consent calendar, minutes, the December 14, 2015 regular meeting, and the December 15, 2015 special meeting of the Board of Trustees,
As amended.
as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, that is unanimous. We will now move on to our discussion items. Discussion item A, other post-employment benefits, OPEB update.
Agenda bill for discussion item A is information that was requested to bring forward regarding what is the status of our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits. Right, more or less, this is just an update. The OPEB liability, which is detailed in our audit report, which is in the same report tonight, does talk about the outstanding liability that we have, which is $11.6 million. That is comprised of two groups. One are retirees that have currently retired with the district, and employees that are actively working and have the potential of drawing on the retiree benefits. Taking that liability into our financial statements per our GASB 45, where we have to acknowledge the liability, we also have to acknowledge how we are going to fund that liability. And back in November 2014, the board approved a trust through the California Employers Retirement Benefits Trust through CalPERS. And the initial deposit within this trust was $1,002,254. And since the initial contribution, we get quarterly updates on how that trust is doing. And as of the September 30th, 2015, the balance in the trust is $926,231, which is a decrease of $76,022. The trust is set up through an investment type strategy where you had the option to pick what type of strategy, strategy 1, 2, and 3. It is on strategy 1, which is more one of out of the 3 is the most aggressive, but intended over a long period of time. We're just looking at a very short period of time, but it has lost money. I don't have a quarterly report, or the website does not provide one through December 31st, 2015, but it does give me activity on a day-to-day basis, and I am able to give a little bit of an update at the time that this report is due. I can only go through September, but as of now, it's $912,000. So from 926 to 912, so it has decreased. The intent, as my understanding, was to establish this trust and pay for our ongoing liability. We're on a pay-as-you-go, how we're funding our retiree benefits. Our contributions have been averaging under $500,000 each year. And with that, it would, and what's in the trust right now, it would barely cover 2 years of expenses. As for example, in the 14-15 year, we had $428,000 in retiree benefits, and then 436 the year before, and 462 the year before. The trust is going to pay for the ongoing benefits, but then it will be depleted in about 2 years. I'm going to be making a transfer of at least the first 6 months of this year, which will be approximately under $300,000, but about 250 or so less. I think some more discussion needs to happen regarding how do we want to fund this. We are in compliance with GASB 45. The part of disclosing it in our financial statements and have it in actuarial study, but the part about how are we going to fund this liability needs to be addressed. And right now, we're addressing it with the trust fund, but it's not pay, it will not pay 2 years. So I do have one recommendation, is maybe having this brought back quarterly, so that it keeps it on the forefront as to how you want to address it as you're moving forward. So there isn't any financial consideration right now that I'm asking, so it's for discussion and information purposes only, but I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
So Teresa, thanks for your presentation. So can you just go over briefly, these are lifetime benefits?
The employees that qualify must work for the district for X amount of years, and currently,
It's a 20-year?
for example,
Is it?
OEA has to work for 10 years, and if you work for the district for 10 years and retire, you can receive medical benefits and dental and vision and medical through age, for 5 years, or not to exceed age 66. So when you look at, in the actuarial report, they actually know the ages and who is currently taking the benefits, and also the ages of the employees and their years of service with the district. So that's where we're getting the liability. The biggest liability that we're incurring is with the potential of the current employees that we have. In the report, I showed 4.1 million for the current retirees, but for active, the potential is 7.5 million. With that, it's $11.6 million that we have it unfunded.
So OEA are only liable for our certificated staff through the age of 66. What about non-certificated? Do we offer lifetime benefits?
There is an agreement, an agreement with the CalPERS. I don't have the exact information on the CalPERS, but Jan can help me on this one. I don't remember exactly how the CalPERS one works on health benefits. No, okay. It's my understanding. Oh, in fact, it is in our audit report where it explains it a little bit better. I could find it. It's in, I could give you that. It's on note number 8, which is on page number, pension liability. Sorry, just gonna take a moment here. But it does explain our plan a little better.
Page 138.
Oh, did you?
Page what, please?
138.
He's in the packet.
Of the packet.
Of the board packet, page 138, where, which is a representation, is a page in our board packet from the audit report. It does talk about the amount of certificated, classified, and confidential.
The paragraph at the bottom of the page.
And also in the middle where it talks right there about the duration of benefits, up to age 66, 65, 65, required years of service, 10 years, minimum age that you have to be. Dependent coverage is no. and the district contribution is 100%.
But my understanding is sorry,
Go ahead.
my understanding is we offer a lifetime health benefit. And it doesn't end at age 65 or 66, that it continues. And that is, you know, if we are having CalPERS administer our health plan, that we are required to provide a lifetime benefit.
There is a cost each month of about $100 per person that's drawing on the benefits. And that is for a lifetime, as long as the person is taking the benefits, even though our portion stops. There is an administrative fee, if that's what you're talking about.
So you're saying that the health benefit ends at 65 or 66, depending on the class of employee, but we continue to pay $112 or whatever it is right now,
Yeah, it's
20 something.
It's an administrative fee that's required.
Is that per employee?
Per
or
employee, per month.
Per month?
For certificated.
For all.
Aren't we paying more for, if I look at the classified contract, I'm reading language that makes me think that we are paying a lot more per month than that.
If they're taking the medical benefits up to the 65, 66, when they become eligible for Medicare and they
Right.
switch over
To the supplement.
to the supplement, or to,
I mean, where this would become supplemental health insurance.
there's only that piece, which is about $100 per month per person, that is ongoing, as far as I know. Am I missing something?
Well, my understanding was more that we are continuing to pay a lifetime benefit to retirees for health benefits, that for certificated employees, it is limited to that amount that
cap,
increases
like the
every year,
$900
but
something
is like
dollars.
around 100 something a month. And that for classified, it didn't have that same limit and could possibly be much higher. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing and you're talking about it as a cost or a fee and I'm talking about it as a benefit and we're all talking about the same thing or not. I mean, my understanding is that it's that post-65 benefit that's, right, that's the vast majority of that 11 million
No,
liability.
The 11 million is broken up into active and current. I can investigate and bring back that again for some more clarification, but it's my understanding that once the employee elects to go on to Medicare, that now we're only have the piece, the administrative piece.
And, you
But
know,
I could
and
be
I think
wrong.
Apollonie's is in the same CalPERS system, and they call it an administrative fee, so I would be interested to getting more clarification on this, so if we have consensus on that, we give a little direction there to have that brought back to us. In the meantime, we can certainly move forward with discussing this trust account.
So, can I just comment that I think, Julie, what you might have been talking about is in the, I'm trying to remember what we call it. We get that report every 2 years. It's an actuarial report, right? Every 2 years, and they were talking about the, and it said there the difference between the classified and the OEA union in terms of, I don't remember exactly what it said, but I think that's where it was. And I just wanted to mention this because I don't know when we're gonna get another actuary report, whether it's this year or we're in an off year, because I know it's every 2 years.
This is every 3 years?
Every 3? Teresa, do you happen to know?
It's 2.
2?
It's 2.
Are we
So we
gonna
should be
get that
due-
this year?
We should be due another report.
But it's also in the contracts themselves. I mean,
Okay,
it's
okay.
contracts.
Okay. So I had a couple other questions too. Well, I just wanted to ask the basic question, going back to the page 190 in this agenda item. Then you have on the right side of 190, it says unit value summary. I don't quite understand that. Could you explain that, what that $74,000 is there?
Was the number of units. There's a per unit,
Oh, that's not dollars.
yeah, there's a
Okay.
per unit amount, and we currently have 74 units within, it's like shares,
I see.
within this investment package.
Okay, so in light of the fact that this has gone down, and I guess my personal comments on this is I would like to know more about the other options that, you know, there was when we opted for this, we picked strategy 1, which was the most, I would call it aggressive in terms of potential interest earned, and there was strategy 2 and strategy 3. So I would, you know, if you're gonna come back to us with more information at a future meeting, I'd like to know how have those two done, and if we aren't too happy with this one, you know, would it benefit us to change to a different strategy? Are we even allowed to do that because we've set up this trust? Those kind of things. And then also, you know, since this is January and this is current through September 30th, you know, when do they come out with the December one? If we could put it on our meeting, whatever's the next one after, when the, you know, that end of the year report comes out, that would be helpful. And then just a better understanding also, this is a whole separate question. What if we hadn't invested in this and we had just continued to do the pay as we go? Where would we be? I mean, just having seen the numbers go down on this trust account, it just makes you wonder, okay, what if we hadn't done this and we continued pay as you go? What would have, where would we be in terms of that? I don't know if that's something you can address right now.
I can look into finding out when and if we can change our strategy, if they allow it every month, once a year, twice a year. I can find that out. But what I did find out through the website is, as you had mentioned in the attached page of the CalPERS statement, that we have 74,622 shares, I guess you would say, units, that have a value of 12.412. I'm able to look on a daily basis of what it is right now, and as of today, for strategy 1, it's 12.23. And at the same time, strategy 2 is at 12.99, and strategy 3 is 11.98. So there is that ability to look and see where we're at on a daily basis, and coming out with a quarterly report that they put together on a quarterly basis is should be coming out soon, because I have the data. They should be able to provide the quarterly report, and like I mentioned, I'd like to have this brought back on a quarterly basis to where it's kept as an item to be looked at.
Okay, so the other two strategies, those numbers were lower. That means there's less shares. How does that equate to dollars? I'm sort of...
We actually still have the same amount of shares, the 74,622. It's just the unit per share has gone down.
That unit.
I mean, let's not lose sight of why we created this trust account, because we created a trust account because we have a large unfunded OPEB liability. And we created a trust account to put some money aside and start building up money to help the district's long-term financial stability. That was the idea behind it. When the board decided to put a certain amount in, a majority decided to take 2 years worth of pay-as-you-go, put put it in a trust account, hopefully be earning some interest on that, which, because the stock market is down the past year, has not happened. And also at the same time, to use the funds that were in there for pay-as-you-go, which we haven't done yet. So that needs to be done. And then the idea was that we would keep revisiting this fund and see what money we have available and try to build it up over time to try to address that $11 million, $12 million number, that ever increasing liability. So that was the idea behind it. I just think we need to make sure that we're using those funds for the pay-as-you-go right now until the board revisits it and decides whether the board wants to continue with that strategy, add money to it, or what we want to do with it. So I like your idea of revisiting it with updates on a regular basis, either, even if it's just an information item, just to get that sort of regular update. But I think we do need to have it again, get some more information about some of the questions we have, and then revisit what we want to be doing with that time, with that money.
So Julie, I don't know what your recollection was, but I thought annually we were going to be revisiting it. So I guess I kind of expected it to come back in November.
Well, we created it in November,
Yeah.
and we funded it in January. I think in our January meeting.
Yes,
This
that's
is
right.
1 year
Okay.
since I did.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with the fact that we're looking at it again now. I mean, it's a discussion item, so we're not sitting here taking action on it. I would like to get more information and then maybe have it brought back so we can make some decisions about it.
And then what we set aside was 2 years of pay-as-you-go, right? And then I felt like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like the consensus of the board was that the goal was, if possible, that annually we set aside 2 years of pay-as-you-go, using 1 year to pay down our pay-as-you-go and 1 year to start to build up to offset this giant $11 million unfunded liability. Is that?
I think so,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I guess,
That's my recollection.
Okay.
Well, I think we talked about it, we did make a firm decision. So, I mean, because
well,
obviously
what
it's
we did
dependent
was
on
we
the
funded it
budget.
and discussed it, but left it up to
We
the
didn't make
next
a firm
board
decision.
because each board would have to be making that decision
Right,
based on current economic
yeah,
times
current budget.
and current board,
Mhm.
exactly, and
Mhm.
current budget. But I do want to make sure that the pay-as-you-go is coming out of that trust account, because that is what the board decided to do. And unless the board changes that, not today, because it's discussion, but unless the board changes that direction, then that's the direction that needs to be taken.
Good.
Okay, so that's sort of questions, comments. We're gonna, may I take it to public comment? And then, are there any comments from the public?
Can I just add one item of clarification? On the agenda bill for 14-15, in the box, it does mention that if we were to take our actuarial study and what our current pay-as-you-go costs, so the two combined, if you were to continue to pay, to fund it's the annual OPEB cost to keep up with the liability, it's $1.5 million. And what we contributed in the 14-15 year was the $1 million in the trust and the $428,000 on the pay-as-you-go. So we were actually able to fund 94% of just the annual cost.
So in a way, we've already done it for an extra year.
So to reduce the trust to pay for the ongoing, that 94% will go down.
Okay.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
OEA President Charles Shannon. My comments are on behalf of my members, not on behalf of myself. Just wanted to clarify that. The post-retirement benefit that we receive is capped for OEA, for certificated staff. It is not capped. I was in the health committee group led by Lorraine Farrell, and that was stated by Lorraine. And OEA has made an effort to work with the district in a subcommittee. We signed an MOU to look for something that is both mutually a win-win for our members and for the district. I think that that should be acknowledged when having these conversations, and I think that there should be expertise in explaining these things. These are very sensitive issues with teachers. That's a benefit that we negotiated in the past, and we're not going to just give up a benefit unless we see that it's beneficial both for our teachers, and of course we would love to see that it's a benefit for the district. But currently ours is capped. It has always been capped. Our cap has not been increased, and we think that there should be some attention to possibly looking at, do we let another bargaining team have an uncapped benefit? But the conversation is different for certificated versus non-certificated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Thank you.
Can I add something? When it comes back, I guess I found it a little confusing just to have 2 pages here on this topic, because it makes you just focus on the second page, the, total amount going down. Of course, we have the first page, but when it comes back, I don't know exactly what information to ask for, but it seems like a little more information would be helpful, as you already suggested, some background on the classified. Thank you.
I'd also like to, Teresa, when you bring it back, I'd like to see a comparison of the 3 different options.
The 3 different strategies, the investment strategies.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah, and whether we have the ability to change or not, and how often. I know that Oglani's has also got this kind of fund. It might be helpful to know, what are they? Did they do strategy 1 or
Yes, they did.
Where they are?
They are
Okay.
on strategy 1.
Okay.
Presented to us when we selected.
Okay, thank you.
And I do think, this really does go to address what Charles said. I see these 2 things as going sort of hand in hand, because it's us trying to help. I mean, it's easy as a board to just let it, just ignore it, but it is, it's much easier to ignore the fact that this liability is hanging out there, but.
And growing.
And growing, exactly, and, it's not easy to say, okay, let's take some money and put it aside, but it does feel like if you want to be a caretaker for the long-term financial stability of the district, that it's important to do that, and, so that's really the motivation behind it. I can say for me personally, and I can't speak for you guys, but it is hard to take money that's out there and put it aside for a specific purpose that does help the long-term fiscal health of the district.
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge what Charles pointed out, though, that we do need to acknowledge the difference between OEA and CSEA in all of it. Thanks.
Saying, and I don't know if Akalani's has that distinction. Okay, so that was just a discussion item. Let's move on to discussion item B, Board Policy Administrative Regulation 0460, Audit.
You have before you this evening a brand new policy. It is 0460, Local Control Accountability Plan. This policy actually mirrors a CSBA policy, which provides pretty much all of the requirements that are found in the Education Code related to the LCAP process. We are starting the season of LCAP, and this policy actually communicates all of those requirements. It is an optional policy. Some policies that we put in place are referred to as mandated policies or optional. This is an optional policy. And within the policy, it also outlines all of the requirements. We kept them all in for that flow, although many of the requirements in the LCAP may not pertain to Orinda directly, primarily because we are a K-8 district. There may be some requirements for high school, and there are some additional requirements based on the number of unduplicated students that fall into the supplemental funding category. So there's a policy section, and then there's an administrative regulation section. I am happy to report that there's nothing in here that we don't do. We follow everything that pertains to Orinda. So it serves, if you choose to move forward with this policy, as a communication piece for our community.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, well, I first want to say thank you, Kathy, and I remember that I asked for this, so I really appreciate you putting this together. So I just want to clarify, since I didn't have a chance to really search it out. You just mentioned that some of the things don't apply to us, for example, because we're not a K-12 district and they apply to high school. So those things I think what you just said is those things are not included?
They are. They're still
Oh,
in
they
the
are
policy.
still in here,
Yeah.
okay.
We left,
You just left it as is.
I left because they're all requirements for an LCAP.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good idea that we consider having this policy. I don't know whether we need to include the things for high school, but if she left them in, I don't. Go ahead.
When we go through the LCAP process and complete an LCAP, the state priorities that include high school, we still need to report on them in the LCAP. So, and we need to say does not apply to our district. So that was one of the reasons I kept it here, because we're still reporting on it, even if it doesn't apply.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I think as a communication tool, it's great to have this policy, especially knowing that it's the one that CSBA recommends and that you have to follow it because of the LCAP. So thank you for putting this together for us.
Any other questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, I just had a comment. This is an optional policy. About 0.5% of our students are the unduplicated. I just, when I saw the policy, when I first came on the board, I asked Kathy to show me the policy manual. And she goes, which binder do you want to see? And they're all like this, and there's like shelves full of binders for a policy manual. And I don't see the need for this. But I don't have any real fundamental objection to doing it either. I just wanted to make a note of that.
And the LCAP does cover all our students, even if the supplemental funding really only covers a very small percentage. I mean, the LCAP's sort of geared towards districts with, economy, but, I mean, it is a plan that applies to all students.
Yeah, we still have to do it, even though we only have a small amount of supplemental funding, but we have to go through the process for all of our students. It's just that the funding doesn't give us much extra funding, but it still includes, I mean, we still have to do the process. I think it's great to have the communication piece here as to this is what LCAP means and this is what we're doing. I think it's important for us because it is, even though we don't get a lot of supplemental funding, that is the mechanism the state has given us to, the local control piece the state has given us to address our budget is through LCAP.
Any other questions from the board? Any comments from the public?
Yes.
OEA President Chalshen. Thank you, Sarah. You made an important distinction. LCAP actually is a plan. to guide our district and our funding. And the supplemental is for that, I guess you were saying 1.5%, but still, that's a significant number. Those kids are just as important. I want to say that in the LCAP, it says, under this policy that we're proposing, it's aligned with other district and school plans. Earlier, you made a real important addition of language to include that we will seek out teacher expertise in our professional development. And that would then make it in line with our LCAP. So I appreciate that change, and it's here in the CSBA policy or proposed language. Further, I wanted to point out that it says, the board may adopt revisions to the LCAP at any time during the period in which the plan is in effect, provided the board follows the process to adopt the LCAP pursuant to Education Code 52062. So when I say by adopting this, we're acknowledging that the board has an important role, that at any time, not just when you're approving the LCAP, at any time during a public meeting, you can make revisions to the LCAP. I think that's an important distinction in this CSBA language. That was probably the most important language I could see here that would benefit and direct the board, because that might be needed. So please pay attention to that.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? The board, any other comments? This is a discussion item only. We'll move on to discussion item C, Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee vacancies. Stuart, you got off easy tonight.
I sit on the Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, and we have some vacancies right now. I wanted to bring that information forward. There is a letter from Linda Landau, the committee chair, that in order to continue functioning with our committee, we do need to fill some vacancies. So one has completed their term and does not want to continue. One has resigned. And the other three, their terms ended December 2015. Our next meeting, because we meet twice a year, is in June. So there'll need to be some further discussion and action as to how the board would like to fill or continue the terms of there are two people who would like to continue on the committee, and the other three that, actually one has until 2017, two would like to continue, so we're only looking at continuing and then also filling for two positions.
Do you know why Eileen Palmer left, resigned?
It didn't, it was just too difficult in her schedule.
So Linda Landau and Michael Robinson, we could extend theirs to December 2019. They're both going?
Yes, that's correct. And they're willing to accept that.
And then what's the process where we, by which we go out and get people to serve on the committee? Do we do newspapers, do we do email, do we do constant contact?
We had a subcommittee of the board last time,
Okay, subcommittee two.
and you did advertising.
The advertising, we went in the paper?
I think we had a notice in the paper, and we also did something in the e-news. We could probably do the Orinda Outlook also this time. So we do sort of local advertising. We had something in the Orinda Sun.
Can we just do some personal reaching out too?
So we, created a process they could fill out. There was an application form. They submitted the application form, and then the subcommittee reviewed the applications and selected people on that basis. Did it for the original time, and also the last time we went out for some vacancies, or to create the staggered terms. Because when we created it, we didn't have to make it.
Is Tyson Crumholz ever on the committee?
On the subcommittee, I was on it with, can't remember either.
I don't know why I'm thinking this. Something in me feels like I remember Tyson toward the end of his term volunteering to be on that
Committee or the subcommittee to pick members for the committee?
I don't know.
No, the subcommittee.
Yeah.
I can't remember the subcommittee.
Ah,
I
okay.
think it was you.
Yeah, but I did it 2 times.
No, the last time, was it, it could have been Tyson or it could have been,
Maybe it was Tyson.
I thought it was possibly Tyson.
Sorry, Tyson.
It wasn't me, Matt, right? Nope. And that was before Carol was elected, so it was either Tyson or Chris. I don't remember, it was either Tyson or Chris, I thought maybe it was Tyson. Anyway.
We didn't get a ton, the first time when we created it, we got a good response, but the second time when we were just trying to fill the vacancies, we got a very small response. For whatever reason, but I don't really know why.
Smaller, yeah.
Well, I definitely think that if Linda and Michael are willing to extend their terms, I think we should do that.
Yeah, it's good to have the continuity for one thing.
Mhm.
And then if you need help at all, the subcommittee to get out and advertise this and get it filled, I'm happy to serve.
Anyone else want to volunteer?
I wouldn't mind doing it.
Okay, all right.
I haven't
All right.
done
So
that
why don't we have
before.
Matt and Sarah?
And meanwhile, if anyone's interested, who is the person that they get directed to contact? Teresa? Okay, in terms of they fill out an application.
Well, we have to generate.
What was
Yeah,
the
you
time
can.
frame last time for us to be able to get?
It was a
things out
good bit of
before?
time, but we've got the file.
Okay, so let's take a look at that and just try to get those advertising out. But let's make sure we do the Orinda Outlook this time too,
Okay.
because that'll be a good community resource.
In Linda's, the committee chair's letter to us, she speaks very clearly that she'd like us to get on this right away, promptly in January, so selections can be made by May.
Let's see how quickly we just get the advertising out, and I forget how long a window we gave last time. We can just give a similar window and.
This week, we don't have any board meetings tomorrow, so we.
So you can meet.
Tomorrow.
Okay, that, I guess we discussed it, but we haven't on to the public for comment. So is there any comment from the public?
On this, sorry, no.
Seeing none, so we rest on that, so that's the end of that one. And then the last thing, we just have an information item, really doesn't have discussion, but we have information item on the Wagner Ranch solar array rotation change.
No, this will.
Yeah, we don't even, I know, I'm sorry, because that's your only name there. That's why you read no minutes, so people can make it review.
Contact Stuart with
There's
questions.
information that is in the agenda though on that. And now we're on to communications. Do we have any board reports?
So today I went to the Orinda Bus Transportation, School Bus Transportation Authority meeting. Orinda specifically, relative to school buses, continues to have problems. Sleepy Hollow and Wagner routes are the biggest problem. They've had significant mechanical failures of buses on the windy roads on those 2 specific routes. One is El Toinal, the other is Charles Hill. As well, they're experiencing a real significant driver shortage. Not only are buses breaking down, but then drivers aren't showing up to work or are not working any longer, and they're having a hard time filling those routes. So the bus company is working really hard. They're losing all their drivers to Google and Facebook. So they pay, let's say, $17 an hour at Google and Facebook, pay $35 and $40 an hour. plus they feed them in a Google cafeteria and all sorts of other things, so there's a real problem with getting drivers, school bus drivers, and then retaining them. They trained and certified 27 drivers last year and lost 28.
Wow.
The only other main point to make is that the whole function of school buses is to reduce congestion on the roads. It's not necessarily to get kids to schools, it's to reduce traffic congestion. And the only thing I can tell you is that parents are speaking very clearly to the Transportation Authority, and the Transportation Authority is taking it very seriously, and the company that delivers the service is we're trying everything we can. The one thing we have in the contract are called liquidated damages. So if they fail to pick up a kid, if they fail to make a stop, if they fail to have a driver, they start writing us checks, and they are doing that. But that doesn't do the kids any good who are trying to get to school on time. So we continue to work as a committee. The urgent nature of the work is being communicated really clearly. We sat at a table, and we do every month with the employees of the school bus company. They're getting the message really clearly. They're coming up with strategies to get new buses up here from LA that don't have mechanical problems, to get drivers here. If you know anybody who's retired and would like to drive a school bus, they're looking for them. That's really what they're finding right now is people that are retired that want something to do during the day and hang out with loud kids. It's an opportunity, but I just want to let people know about that.
Thank you. Is that something we want to talk about further as a board? I mean, you brought that up before. I know it's a problem because I've seen it at OIS.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything for us to do board-wise. I just want to give you guys the information in case you hear anything from members of the public.
Okay.
Any other updates from the board?
I'd like to report that my two subcommittees, sort of, I guess, Jason and I have met with the Friends of Wagner Ranch Nature Area, and we're beginning to have meetings with other groups of people. I'm going to be reaching out to Jim Mannheimer soon in our efforts to take a look at a broad new policy and a new vision for the nature area. And Kathy and I have held so far 2 meetings of the Student Safety Committee. We had a very robust discussion on the curriculum last time. We have 2 more meetings scheduled, but I anticipate we'll need a 3rd. But we're moving right along. And I really, really, really appreciate the parents and the teachers who are coming to this. They've been really good, they've been diligent. So there you go. That's my report. And it's sticking to it.
Great. I just want a quick question on the Wagner Ranch. Are you anticipating coming back to the board? I don't know what your timeline is on that. I don't know if you have a timeline, since that was a policy.
This one's, I think, going to take a little while. Jason and I have had a lot of talks about this, and we keep getting more and more and more excited. We've got really big ideas about what we can do with the nature area in terms of education for our kids, and in terms of sharing it with other communities, with just, we've just thought way outside of the box, and the Friends have thought outside of the box, and now we want to meet with the board of the Friends. So we've met with the executive board, but now we want to meet with the whole board. And we're going to choose some community members, meet with them, and I think it's going to take a little while. Mostly, Jason can't meet every single week 2 or 3 times a week, so,
Of course.
we're accommodating his schedule here.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage you to also come back to the board during the process as opposed to at the very end. We didn't, it was, I believe the charge was to update the policy, and one of my concerns was the Friends of the Wagner Ranch Nature Area pollute isn't even in the board policy, and that seemed to me that the obvious thing that needed to get updated right away. And I know you're talking about much bigger things, and that's great. I just thought, you know, just like the safety committee, it'd be great to have that come back and give us an update so we can also hear, you know, your thoughts and where you're headed and that kind of thing, give our input.
Well, that's what I'm doing now, and that's why we're meeting with friends. Because, you know, they're the ones who are really working there. And,
Oh, yeah.
and so we wanted to start with them.
Sure, absolutely. I just
So-
meant in a month or two, you know. We can't have a full discussion here because we have board report.
So, or do you have anything you want to add?
Me?
Board report?
Let's see. Not really. I think we're making good progress. I haven't been going to a lot of meetings since the last,
Holidays.
the holidays have been in the middle of it, other than our, you know, reported board meetings. So, no, I think everything's going along fine, thank you.
Julie, are you going to report on superintendent search?
Would you like me to?
Yes.
Superintendent search is going full bore. I think you guys know this, it's in there, but we're making good progress. We had our first round of interviews last week. And after that, we selected finalists, and we are interviewing them the rest of this week. So, you know, there's nothing really new on the website to update people, but it does have the schedule for what we're doing. And I think the process has been very informative and very helpful and interesting, and it's really been a great, time-consuming, but very wonderful process, really. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's where we're at. Now you're ready to give your final superintendent report? No pressure. You're like, I got nothing.
My thanks again for the wonderful reception, I really appreciate that. And thanks to Kathy.
Yes, thanks to
for all the
Kathy.
work on it. Just a couple of more mundane matters, so to speak, but are very important. We're still trying to organize for you the study session on facilities, hopefully in February, but we need back some of you that have responded, whether you can make any of those dates or not. So let Kathy know she's keeping track of the possible dates. And you may have noticed this week we lost AT&T service to the district with a bad line, and it's outside the district. And I want to thank Stuart for his dedicated work in getting that line up and running with the AT&T folks. It took a while, but they finally figured out what it was and got it going along and we wanted to we survived.
Weird one.
Yeah.
Jen, I have one other thing.
Yes.
I would really like us, as a board, to do something for the judge, or who was at Sleepy Hollow who caught the fire. It occurred to me that if he wasn't there, we could have had a real serious situation on our hands, not just at the school, but in the surrounding neighborhoods. And
We have our employee program. You should use that.
I would just like to somehow publicly thank him and acknowledge him at a board meeting.
Thank you. Nice suggestion.
The other two things I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
We are working on setting up a schedule for you to visit the schools.
Thank you.
Had a chance to put all that together yet, but we will be doing that. And we'll also be working on a schedule to get some student participation. in the
Okay,
board
great.
meeting. So those two things are still being in the works.
Thank you.
Student participation?
Yeah, presentations.
Some of the things like we used to do,
Okay,
you know, like to show us some of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
programs and things going on.
Okay, great.
The school six. Great, okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Future agenda items, anyone?
We've got a lot.
You have Please, no. Okay.
Facilities bond study sessions, top on my agenda. We've discussed all the other.
Motion?
I'm hoping that we can, I'm gonna move that we adjourn, but I'm gonna move that we adjourn in honor of our retiring superintendent, Joe Jackman. Just thank you so much for your
This
service.
is
to
not
the
adjourned.
district. So that's my motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains.
We
It's
have
unanimous.
another chocolate.